Hello everybody, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and welcome back to the channel. And when you guys will be watching this, it will be update 15.0 time, which means brand new battle pass, which means brand new ships stuffed into second progression tier for 2,500 doubloons. And Wargaming has graciously enough gifted us the option to add the tier 6 pan-European light cruiser, the Elli, to our arsenal or fleet. At first glance, you look at this ship and what do you see? And your eyes do not deceive you, especially if you have said that is a Duca di Astoa for the tier 6 Italians and light cruiser, right? And yes, that's exactly what this ship is. It is basically just a copy-paste hull that is brought over to the pan-European nation and or branch, or whatever you want to call it. But is she any good? That is the question that hopefully I will be showing here to you today and talking a little bit about, so that, you know, if you want to use or spend 2,500 doubloons to pick her up, hopefully I can showcase what she does good and what she isn't so good at either. I mean, at the end of the day, and this kind of sums it up a lot, the Elli, in my opinion, is just a little bit easier to play than the Duca di Astoa. Is it better? That's a little bit debatable, but I think it's a little bit easier just because the range, especially for a tier 6 light cruiser, is, you know, greater than the Duca. The Duca has relatively low range. I think its main battery range is around like 14 kilometers. And the Elli goes ahead and picks up, you know, an additional 2.5 kilometers on its range, reaching out to 16.5 kilometers, which again is very nice for a tier 6 light cruiser. Now, why is that very nice? Why is it nice, especially at this tier, to have longer ranges? Well, the one big thing is because all these cruisers down at tier 6 like to explode, especially when a battleship just shoots at it or looks its turrets at it, points its turrets at it, excuse me. And the Elli is no exception. This ship will explode on contact with any large caliber armor piercing shells, as its citadel does stretch the entire length of the hull pretty much. So you have to use tremendous amounts of caution when playing the ship. Definitely want to be utilizing its strengths, which are its speed, its maneuverability, and now obviously we get a third thing additionally on top of that, which is its gun range. So this ship really does like to kite at longer ranges and farm with a 8-second reload being its reload time, which again is not terrible. Obviously there are going to be other cruisers that are going to be able to pump more DPM down range, but 8 seconds really isn't that unbearable in my opinion, especially still at these tiers where there's nothing crazy in regards of reload time, right? The Elli does have worse DPM, as you would have guessed. I think the Duca has around 7.5 second reload. This does have 8. So it drops a little bit on the DPM scale, but not by much, guys. Very marginal distance between the two is DPM. So again, it's really not that much of a concern. But yeah, like I always do with these video guys, I'm going to highlight some strengths, some cons, going to go ahead and dig around the hood, showcase what this ship can do in battle, and then I'll go ahead and give you my final thoughts on the Elli. So without further ado, guys, let's get on into it. Looking at the armor layout of the Elli, you have that infamous 16mm nose, you have that 16mm ass with a armor belt of 70mm with the upper belt coming on around 20, and then a deck of 25. If we go ahead and look at the citadel, it is quite large, like I've already previously stated. It stretches from turret 1 to turret 4 and is not that hard to hit, guys. Really, you have to be careful because this thing can absolutely get schwacked if not angled properly. And even some destroyers, especially when they get in closer to this thing, can citadel you too. So you're going to have to be careful. Sometimes you get lost in seeing the little triangle icon and say, oh my god, this DD is mine, when you're up close and personal, and you go flat broadside, you get all your turrets to bear, and guess what happens in return? That DD player is not an idiot. he loads armor piercing and then sends you back to port instead while taking minimal amounts of damage. So please use caution and only swivel to utilize all of your turrets hopefully when you know that the enemy destroyer player is not using armor piercing, or if he's just not aiming at you in general, and if he's just completely blissfully unaware of your existence, which has happened and can happen at this tier. I've seen it. Moving into the survivability elements aspects of the ship, you have 29,700 HP points with a torpedo belt reduction of 7%. Again, nothing too flashy here. To me, this is pretty damn low. You are a tier 6 light cruiser and you have a citadel. So again, be careful. And of course, you don't want to be taking torpedoes because you have a 7% torpedo belt reduction, which again, it's not going to bode well for you if you take a torpedo, right? Moving into the artillery, this is the 4x2 152 millimeter mounts. They do reload in 8 seconds and have a 180-degree turn time of 25.7 seconds. And again, they have a range which is actually quite comfortable at 16.5. So I really do like that about the Elli. It allows me to play in a comfortable region or an area on the map, so I can go ahead and get my supporting fire down range relatively quick. I do find myself though, if I have to get in close and personal with, in tight with these engagements, it's not really good. It's not going to bode well for the ship just because she is made out of paper. So you're going to want to make sure you stay at ranges, and you always want to keep moving. The ship does not like to stop and start a whole lot, and that's obviously why with the recommendations of upgrades that I'm going to showcase later in this video, why I actually don't recommend taking prop mod. Just because I don't like the engine power. If you want to juke with that, you can. For me personally, I want to make sure I utilize my speed, which is a massive strength of this ship. I want to make sure I can turn on a dime and, I can dodge incoming fire, because again, I can't rely on my armor to mitigate that damage for me, right? Constantly staying mobile is the name of the game here. Moving into the high explosive shells with 2100 damage with a 7% fire chance, that can go ahead and pen 25 millimeters of armor. And then again with the AP, you have 3200 for maximum citadel damage. Again, initial velocity of that is 1000 meters. The velocity of the guns do seem pretty good. I will point that out to you. But again, from what I can see, the Duca and the Elli both have the same initial speeds with their AP and HE, so there's not really much difference with their shells, other than that this ship can extend its range out to 16.5, while the Duca is relying more on its spotter plane if it wants to, get out to those ranges, and it's just speed in general to get it out of those sticky situations. Going into the secondary batteries, really not much worth talking about here. 3x2 100mm guns. I mean, you have them essentially. They can go ahead and penetrate 17 millimeters of armor, which is good for this tier. But again, once you get up to higher tiers, if you, God forbid, you get in a tier 8 game, I don't really know how much they're going to do for you, other than setting the occasional fire to with that 6% fire chance, right? Going into the torpedoes, and you'd probably be thinking, hey, if I find myself in a sticky situation, it's kind of a last-ditch effort. I can send these out and potentially take that enemy ship down with me. Really not the case here with these torpedo tubes. You do have a reload time in 76 seconds. They only have a maximum range of 6 kilometers, which still is not terrible given the fact that, like German heavy cruisers have the same kind of aspect, but at least German heavy cruisers have, 14,000 damage up their sleeve, while this thing only has 7,500 essentially, right? Which these are like your infamous European style of torpedoes that are relatively quick and do relatively low damage. Kind of sucks only having 6-kilometer torpedo range. I would have liked to have seen these around like the 10-kilometer range. Would have been nice. Even 8 would have been nice. 6 kilometers really handicaps this thing. You're basically going to be fully invested in your guns because the torpedoes are not really going to do much. That'll be honest, right? I got to be honest with you guys, right? Going into the AA defense, now obviously you do have access to the defensive AA fire consumable, and to me that procced is the only way that the ship will reliably shoot down some aircraft. And notice I said some aircraft. Your AA suite is not very good on this ship. I've noticed that. And of course, the video I will be showcasing you, I actually do shoot down a lot of planes, but I think it was more of just getting swarmed by aircraft nonstop and them just sitting in my auras is kind of what translated to me shooting down planes rather than actually shredding planes. I really didn't prevent any strikes. I didn't shoot down enough planes before he got off his initial strike to justify like self-defense. So don't rely too much on your AA, even with that consumable, because it's really not going to be doing much for you. Moving into the maneuverability, and this is where one of the massive strengths are shown or is shown for your ship. 37.7 knots is outstanding. A lot of battleship players will underlead your ship because they really just don't understand how fast you are. This also goes along with the Duca. The Duca has like what 1 knot less speed or something crazy like that. These two ships are famously known for their speed. So use it, right? You don't want to kill your speed unless you absolutely have to. You want to make sure you keep this speed up and utilizing it to the best of your advantage. It allows you to get in positions too of flanking maneuvers. And the best part about this speed of the ship is it's baked rawly, like right into the vessel. So you're not relying on a speed boost. You just simply have this at your disposal 24/7, no matter what. Nothing on cooldown here, right? Which is always a huge plus. Turning circle radius of 710 meters. And of course, with my upgrade I have slotted, I have my rudder shift down to 6.7 seconds, which is great. Again, the concealment base coming out at 11.7, and with your commander slotted on this bad boy, it's like 10 point something, 10.5, 10.4, somewhere around that range. And I'll make sure to highlight in the battle what you can go ahead and get that down to. But yeah, guys, this is basically the Elli in a nutshell. She is a interesting experience, that's to say the least. From a competitive standpoint, I really wouldn't call this ship competitive by any means, but I think this is a fun ship to play every now and then when you want to drop her down to tier 6. Let's say you have a really high level commander up in, the Holland or the Gdansk or something like that, and you want to drop him down onto the ship and kind of bouncing back and forth. This is a fun ship to have a good time down at low tiers with here at tier 6, where things are not like too competitive, right? But there are just going to be flat out better tier 6 vessels than this. But if you want to make this ship work, and I mean like actually work, you're going to want to play at longer ranges for sure with this thing. You're not going to want to get it in close and personal, and you have to have situational awareness and be aware where the enemy threats are, mainly from battleships. Battleships are your nemesis. You have to know where they're at all times. Okay, that is my like big advice with this ship. But again, enough squawking, enough talking about this ship in port. Let's go ahead and check out some gameplay in her. Alrighty guys, and here we are in battle with our tier 6 Pan-European light cruiser. I'll be honest with you guys, there's really not much to talk about this ship and unpack and unravel. I mean, this is a pretty self-explanatory tier 6 light cruiser in game, whose impact is going to be very dependent on the player rather than what it's like actually baked into the ship. I don't think anyone is getting like up and raving about how great the Duca di Astoa is. I think, matter of fact, I would go as far as saying it's a very mediocre tier 6 light cruiser. And now we basically get that same ship repackaged to the Pan-Europeans, essentially just with some minor tweaks here and there, from like a little bit of speed, a little bit of maneuverability changes, that sort of stuff, and different torpedoes. But I guess the one big change that really differentiates this ship from her sister would be the extension of her main battery firing range from 14 kilometers to that 16.5 kilometer range. Whereas the Duca, like I already mentioned, has to rely on that spotter plane to go ahead and take her range out to those ranges equivalent to the Elli. The Elli just has that baked right into the ship, which in my opinion, I just think I'd rather have it baked into my ship rather than based off a consumable, just because, again, if I fly through all my consumables, which it depends on the ship and how many charges you have, you're kind of shit out of luck and you're really stuck to that 14 kilometer ranges, which now with the Elli I can be at those ranges 15 plus or whatever, and I don't really have to worry about it. So obviously here's an example of me breaking my own rule, but again, when I give you these rules, it all depends on the map and the spawn that you're playing on, and again, arguably the biggest consideration, which is the tier. I find myself in a double up tier here against tier 8s, in a double carrier game nonetheless. I really have to put my brain to work here and play to the best of my abilities, or I'm going to be out of this game really, really quick. Now, obviously, if you've been a longtime viewer of my channel, you know that I'm not really a big fan of double up tiers. I actually think the game would be a lot more enjoyable. We'd have a lot more customer retention and a lot more fun per battle if we only had +1, -1 matchmaking, which is arguably what I think would be the better decision. Of course, Wargaming thinks otherwise, because I'm sure their main concern, which again, I understand your concerns with queue times are going to be longer. I don't know if we have enough players for that. I get it, right? I understand. I'm not really here to debate that issue, but again, that's just what I feel. I feel like, a lot of people that are saying that are more tailored towards, only playing higher tier battles and higher tier games, like tier 8s through 9s and 10s and super ships, where the vast majority of the player base already is. So I really don't think it would be that big of an issue. Again, that's just me. I guess we'll let time tell what Wargaming decides to do, down the road. Anything is possible, right? Going back to the Elli guys, obviously here you could see the range going to work for me, and actually that fire chance. When you first look at the HE on this ship, and especially the Duca, the HE is very, very anemic, right? The HE doesn't hit particularly hard. The fire chance isn't particularly, anything to talk about and to get, excited about. It's very, very mediocre, and I guess kind of what I'm trying to think and decipher and unpackage here by what maybe Wargaming's indirectly telling us is that it's one of those ships that they want you to switch between HE and AP. You don't just sit with HE at longer ranges and spam. You want to be an opportunist, and you want to make sure you rotate between the two ammunition types. And I would agree with that if the armor piercing had some kind of special characteristic to it, or just had like an increased alpha damage like you see on the German ships, right? They have like a higher AP alpha strike potential. Well, we don't really have that here, coming in at 3,200, maximum AP damage per volleys per every 8 seconds, right? So I would still kind of recommend that play style. If you find yourself getting sub 12 kilometers in and you have broadsides, you can 100% go ahead and pick apart enemy ships by utilizing armor piercing. But at the same time, you definitely want to make sure that you're sticking with the high explosive, as I think it's just going to be your more consistent ammunition type. And I've talked about this for a while now. We have our opportunistic shell, which is our AP shell. We take chances, potentially get, like a gamble, essentially. Then you have your consistent shell, which is going to be getting not only a little bit of chip damage, but potentially damage over time. That's what you're looking for. And then you're having basically your most consistent shell, which is your semi-armor piercing, just for raw damage in general, right? These are like the 3 shells. As of right now, recording this video, is all the ammunition we have in the game for those 3 shell types, right? So we really don't know. I really can't say, what may be or what will not be, but that's basically how I think about it in my mind, right? But here we are. We can kind of see that the C flank is kind of slowly unraveling. So we're going to start retreating back closer to B and seeing if we really could support our allied destroyers against their enemy DDs. Their enemy DDs are playing it, smart, especially on this map. I think it's whoever controls the B cap really does dominate this map. So we're going to try to counteract that, right? We're really going to try to go in and focus fire enemy destroyers while not getting nuked in return by enemy battleships, because that, again, like I mentioned, is just your biggest threat. But again, a lot of ships will underestimate your top speed. You will see a couple salvos this game where battleship players, they line me up, they get ready, they lead me, and I really don't alter course that much, just because my speed is just so great, and I know that they're never going to hit me, right, based upon where their shells are coming in. Usually, if the shells are, you can tell where they're coming in on the screen based upon when the zoomed in look. If they're tailored more towards the edges, you want to slow down. If they're more towards the middle, you want to speed up and turn out. It's kind of the thought process there. Again, it's hard to describe what I'm thinking or what I'm trying to say without showing visuals, but maybe down the road I'll go ahead and showcase an example of what exactly I'm talking about. So here I'm switching to the armor piercing on a fellow light cruiser ship, the Leander, which, again, you guys know, I really do like the Leander a lot. I think it's a really good ship. And it's definitely quite a fearsome opponent, especially at this tier. So I'm going to have to be careful, especially with that thing short fused AP would make quick work of my ship's, Citadel. So I want to make sure that I am using caution, utilizing my speed, and making sure I maneuver actively to dodge all incoming salvos by the Leander. Again, you'd expect the armor piercing to be a little bit better here, but again, there's really nothing improved with your armor piercing other than your shell velocity at 1,000 meters a second is actually quite good. So I guess the penetration indirectly should be compensated with how fast my shell is traveling to target and reliably doing good damage, landing on certain sections of the ship. It's not coming in with much loft to hit the deck, and it's more straight, so I can really pinpoint where I want to hit, which is that kind of that upper belt is where I really want to land my shell, so I can get full pens on his flat broadside. But again, It's just mediocre chip damage, and I would recommend, like, again, switching from HE to armor piercing as best you can. So I guess it's worth talking about the commander build. You can see based upon the one skill procced here. Again, I'm not really good with the names. This is the name, or this is the skill that allows my dispersion to increase and my top speed to be increased as well, as long as there are more enemy ships spotted in my main battery firing range than there are allied vessels. Again, two birds, one stone, strengthening my ship a lot, because it allows me to not only increase my top speed even more so, again, with the Sierra Mike flag as well, right? So I'm probably getting around 39, almost 40 knots potentially with that skill proc. But again, my dispersion of my shells are going to land tighter and exactly where I want them to make sure that my 8-second salvos coming in of only 8, shells are going to do, theoretically speaking, more damage because they're landing on target where I want them to, rather than, going all over the fucking place, right? That's kind of what my thought process is with using that skill. Now, usually I'm not a fan of this particular skill just because I feel like I have to actively put my ship in not the best situations to get the most out of the skill, or utilize this skill at all, right? And remember, that's a 4-point skill, so it's quite the investment. And also I don't take top grade gunner on this thing, because if I'm going concealment build on her, my concealment is 10.5 kilometers detection. So that means I have to actively put my ship within 10.5 kilometers to make sure I get that minus 10% DPM buff. Well, how I play the ship, I don't want to get within 10.5 kilometers. You know what I mean? Why else would Wargaming gift us 16.5 kilometer main battery firing range if, if they didn't intend us to utilize it, essentially? And again, that is not applicable to every ship. I'm only saying that because everyone knows the Duca's 14-kilometer range is dreadful, and it really does play a hindrance to the ship and how that ship is supposed to play. And again, you're really reliant on your spotter plane to get to those further ranges with that ship. So again, they see that on the Duca, they make the necessary change and they give it to this. So we don't want to be within that 10.5 kilometer range unless we're forced into those bad scenarios based upon cyclones late in game or whatever it is, right? Cap contention. So I want to make sure to utilize that range. And again, this is not a rule I apply to all my ships, especially battleships. Just because you have 26-kilometer main battery firing range doesn't mean I need to be sitting at 26-kilometer range. I want to make that crystal clear. I'm only saying this 16.5-kilometer range, why we have it on the ship, why wouldn't we use it? Because this is a super light cruiser, and for how this ship wants to play and where it wants to play, its element is definitely 14.5 to 16.5 kilometer range is where it really wants to stay. And I think that coupled with my speed and maneuverability is a big reason why the Tirpitz, just shooting his front two guns, front two turrets, really can't land his shells reliably. Not that the Tirpitz has good dispersion anyway, but it's really allowing me to, I guess, stay alive and farm him and kind of frustrate him, buying time for my Kagero to get torpedoes on him potentially and chunk him in certain situations, right? Obviously, in the background, you've been seeing the AA be going off. Again, double CV games, you're just naturally going to get more plane kills, even if you are, having shit AA like I do. I've already gone through all my pops of defensive AA fire. You really haven't noticed that. But again, just constant, being struck by CVs, and people, and obviously them being very considerate and dropping their fighters right above me. I'm just naturally going to get plane kills, but I don't want that to deceive you. I still stand by what I said, which is this ship's AA is really not good. So I want to keep that in mind. Okay. Obviously this is going to go into my my final thoughts here on the Elli, guys. Is this worth the pickup? It's interesting. I think up to this date, we've had a lot of interesting, ships put in the battle passes, right? Especially here on the Christmas holidays, you got the 2 tier 7s, right? The Nuremberg 44 and the Lenzau and all, whatever it's called, right? Very interesting, very fun, competitive to a degree, right? I really like those ships. I think they're fun, and I gradually will go back to playing those ships. The Elli, guys, for me, is one of those ships that it's not a bad ship, but it certainly falls in comparison to other ships. I wouldn't look at this ship as like, oh, this is a really good ship or a really bad ship. I would instead look at this ship like it's a direct upgrade of the Duca. And I think the Duca, everyone's consensus on the Duca is that the Duca is a bad ship. I think this is Wargaming's second, chance at, re-releasing the Duca under a different nation with stats that I wish the Duca had. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I'd look at this ship. So if that's intriguing to you, if that's enticing to you, then by all means pick this ship up. It's only 2,500 doubloons, but I understand that 2,500 doubloons holds different weight depending on the player and how you are, where you are in your life. Okay. If I'm looking at this generically speaking, I probably wouldn't recommend this ship, okay? But the Battle Pass does hold a bunch of other goodies that I've already shown previously in the beginning of this video. So if those are intriguing to you, especially I believe the Tier 7 Chios, which is, allowing you access to the Tier 7 in the early access line for the Pan-European battleships. If that's more interesting to you, then yes, I think then that alone would be more of a reason to buy the Battle Pass than just this premium ship. I think this ship is more of just stuffing thrown in there, and I actually think the really big prize is the Chios instead. Obviously, I can't talk about that ship. I can't mention anything about her, how I feel or how I like that ship, but all I know is that it's going to make the grind a little easier for you because you'll be starting off at Tier 7. Rather than at Tier 5 potentially, especially if you don't take part in any gambling in the early access, which again I probably wouldn't. I would set usually like maybe 3 spins and then I'd call it, because I really am not a big fan of those gambling for early access chips that are just going to be in the game anyways in a month, right? But again, there is one thing to keep a note too. There are some different compensations like for credits that are offered by obtaining the ships in the Battle Pass. And I'll go ahead and list those on screen. So again, that might be another reason why to pick up certain said ships, just so you can get them or re-earn them. Like if I already have the Elli, to buy the Battle Pass and get the compensation value, especially if you're in need of like dire credits or need of, credits for whatever you're doing and spending it on for alternative lines or upgrades or whatever, that might be again another reason on why you would do this, right? Because you want to make sure that you are replenishing your credits, because again, I'm sure during the holidays here, Christmas and New Year's and all that, people probably spent a lot of their credits and their doubloons and their hard-earned money and cash. So again, it just kind of gets us back to equilibrium here now that we're post the holidays. Of course, it's always sad. Obviously, this game is a lot of fun around the holidays, and I mean the holidays from Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever, and New Year's. But again, now we're back into the normal meat and potatoes of World of Warship seasons, and we're post New Year. So always sad to come here, but again, life must go on. A little bit of a sad sob story by me, but whatever. Again, in the background, I know I haven't talked much about the gameplay, but yeah, this is actually an incredible game. If you've been following along with what's been going on in the background, I really did play my ass off here, and hopefully you guys see that. Again, it's not easy. Anyone should know that's been playing this game for any amounts of time that, getting double up tiered, especially in a cruiser, in a double CV game, which is basically perma-spotted all game, it is not an easy thing at all to do. But again, I think it was funny too, because I remember in the port screen, port analysis of this video, I'm going, oh, this thing's AA is shit. And then I go ahead and get a AA defense expert. So it's like, take it with a pinch of salt. The scenario that presented itself to me, and I guess maybe the skills level of the aircraft carriers, and the CVs that are in game with the Graf Zeppelin and the Furious. Like, if it was something like a Yorktown and an Enterprise at tier, it's probably a little bit different, right? A little bit different. Where a Lowenhart and a Yorktown, like, there's just, take that, okay, with another pinch of salt. There's a lot of pinches of salt going around this battle. So I just want to point all this stuff out, because to get a result like this it's shocking. It shocked me when I was playing this. I was halfway through this battle, and I knew, I was like, this is going to be the video that I highlight to my friends here, my family on YouTube, just because it's just like, this is never going to happen, right? And again, look at those salvos, those shots with the skill proc there. It really does allow this ship to land the vast majority of shells, as long as you're the one aiming, and you're aiming right, and you're not constantly missing your damn shells like I am. So that's incredibly frustrating. Again, you can see though, this ship wants to play in the kited position. The Leander is pushing into me, so inevitably I will just have the advantage over him with my speed, with his floaty shells. And again, he has lack of HE, I don't, so I'm just going to get constant penetrations on him, on his lightly armored ship. I will basically win this engagement 9 times out of 10. Unless I'm stupid and go flat broadside to this guy, there's no way in hell I should ever lose this engagement. And again, it eventually, this leads to our victory. Again, our carrier players played okay, whatever, and then obviously our destroyer player and the Kagero played awesome. Really allowed us to win here. But again, the battleship shooting at me, my speed, my kiting ability, the rudder shift mod, this is really putting my ship in its element here. Everything here is this is how the ship wants to wants to play. Okay, as long as I have ocean to utilize, I should be able to win the vast majority of my engagements, right? And even the Chapayev's trying to shoot at me, right, and he can't hit me. So all these things added up to a very good game for me. I think I end with like around 87,000 damage here, which translates to a E rank, which again I can not be more than happy with. Shocked I got it. This is with my second battle. I had to get footage for you guys, and I ended up getting her. First battle was a blowout. Really hate showing those to you guys, so this was a much better battle to showcase kind of what this ship can do. But I will say this ship does require a higher level commander to make it work good. I think if you only have like a 10-point commander or or 13, 14-point commander or lower, this ship does, it's a little bit of a yikes. But again, if you do put a higher level commander, let's say if you have a Holland 21-point commander, you go ahead and bring her down, or anything like that, this ship is definitely a good time. So anyways, we ended up winning this game, thank God. We played the long game here, that's for sure, and we got a great result individually. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will leave you here on the final battle screen. And until next time, guys, stay safe, much love, and I will catch you all in the next video. Have a good rest of your day, guys, and peace out.